It was a chilly autumn evening when three friends, Samir, Jamal, and Yusuf, gathered at their usual meeting spot by the old Blackstone Cave. The cave had been part of their town's lore for as long as anyone could remember. Tales of strange noises, glimmering lights, and hidden treasures deep within its darkness filled their childhood. Now, as young men, they were far more skeptical of such stories, but something about the cave's mystery kept drawing them back. As they sat around a small fire, Jamal broke the silence. "I heard someone found old coins in there last year," he said, poking at the flames with a stick. "Supposedly, they're worth a small fortune." Yusuf scoffed. "Yeah, right. Probably planted by some prankster. Who'd be foolish enough to hide treasure in that cave anyway?" Samir leaned in, a thoughtful look on his face. "Well, think about it. Blackstone Cave is huge, and it has all those passages no one's ever mapped out. If someone did hide something in there, it could still be undiscovered." They all went quiet, each contemplating the possibility. The air around them grew still as if the very cave was listening. "We could go check it out ourselves," Jamal suggested, the excitement in his voice barely contained. "We've all heard the stories, and we're not kids anymore. What's there to be afraid of?" Yusuf laughed. "I think you just want an excuse to go treasure hunting." Samir shrugged. "Maybe Jamal's right. Besides, a little adventure wouldn't hurt. Let's just see what's inside." And so, they decided to embark on one last journey into the mysterious Blackstone Cave. Each of them grabbed a flashlight and a few essentials, and they made their way to the cave's gaping entrance. The light from their flashlights barely pierced the thick darkness as they entered. The cold air smelled of damp stone and earth, and their footsteps echoed ominously. They moved deeper, following a path that Samir swore led to an old chamber he'd read about in a dusty book at the town library. According to the book, this chamber was where townsfolk had hidden their valuables during a long-forgotten war. No one knew if the treasure was still there, but the idea of being the first to discover it ignited a sense of thrill. As they ventured farther in, strange markings appeared on the walls. Carved deep into the stone, they were old symbols none of them could recognize. "Look at these," Samir whispered, running his hand over a series of arrows pointing downward. "I think they're pointing us somewhere." They followed the arrows, eventually reaching a steep staircase cut into the rock. It descended sharply into darkness, and none of them had ever heard of it before. "Maybe we should turn back," Yusuf muttered, feeling a slight chill down his spine. "Come on, we're already here," Jamal insisted, taking the first steps down. "Are you scared?" Reluctantly, Yusuf and Samir followed him, the narrow stairwell squeezing them as they descended. It was a long way down, and they had no idea where it led, but curiosity kept them moving forward. Finally, they reached a large chamber. Their flashlights revealed strange relics scattered across the floor, rusted weapons, broken pottery, and what looked like the remains of an ancient campsite. "Maybe people really did hide out here during the war," Samir murmured, fascinated by the history before them. But their attention quickly shifted to a pile of rocks in the far corner of the room. Beneath the rubble, they could make out the shape of a chest, old and worn, but still intact. "Is that—" Jamal stammered, hardly able to believe his eyes. The three friends hurried over and began clearing the rocks, their hands scraping against the rough edges in their haste. Finally, they revealed the chest, its iron lock rusted but still intact. With a few determined strikes, Yusuf managed to break the lock, and they slowly lifted the lid. Inside, they found coins, each glinting faintly under the flashlight beams. They were unlike anything they'd ever seen, handcrafted and marked with symbols similar to the ones on the cave walls. Beneath the coins lay a stack of scrolls, preserved in leather cases. "These must be ancient," Samir whispered, his voice filled with awe. "Imagine what these could tell us about the people who lived here." They divided the contents carefully, not for greed, but for preservation, intending to study and understand the artifacts. But as they examined the last scroll, Yusuf noticed something unusual. A map, inked with peculiar accuracy, showing not only the cave, but an intricate network of tunnels extending far beyond their current location. "Look at this," he said, laying it out for the others. "There's more to this place than we thought." Their initial plan to take the coins and leave was soon abandoned in favor of exploring further. Guided by the map, they navigated through the narrow passages, each turn revealing a new mystery. Strange paintings lined the walls, depicting scenes of battle, trade, and something that looked eerily like a ritual. After hours of winding through the tunnels, they reached a large room with a stone pedestal at its center. On the pedestal rested a golden amulet, radiating a soft glow that seemed to fill the entire room. "What is this?" Jamal asked, his voice hushed. "Some kind of ceremonial item, maybe?" Samir guessed, stepping closer to inspect it. But as soon as he touched the amulet, a low rumble shook the ground, the walls began to tremble, and dust fell from the ceiling. "We need to get out of here now," Yusuf yelled, fear rising in his voice. They turned to run, but the tunnel they'd come through was collapsing. The only option was a different path, one they hadn't seen on the map. With no time to think, they raced down the unknown corridor, the sound of crashing rocks echoing behind them. The tunnel twisted and turned, seeming endless, until finally they emerged in a part of the cave none of them recognized. It was a narrow ledge overlooking a vast underground lake, with faint light filtering down from cracks in the rock above. Out of breath and shaken, they slumped down, trying to catch their breath. "We almost didn't make it," Jamal said, his voice filled with disbelief. "Did you notice," Yusuf whispered, "how the amulet glowed just before everything started collapsing?" They exchanged glances, a mixture of fear and fascination. "Maybe this place was protected somehow," Samir speculated. "A trap for anyone who tried to take the treasure?" They sat in silence, the weight of their discovery settling over them. Blackstone Cave held secrets they couldn't fully comprehend, and perhaps that was the way it was meant to be. After a long pause, Jamal stood up, looking back toward the lake. "We came here for an adventure," he said, his voice steady. "And we found one. But maybe it's time to leave some things untouched." The others nodded, understanding the wisdom in his words. They carefully packed the scrolls and coins, deciding to bring them to a local historian to ensure their preservation. The amulet, however, was left behind, its glow fading as they departed. Their journey back through the cave felt surreal. They navigated the tunnels with a new respect, understanding that Blackstone Cave was more than just an ancient hiding place. It was a guardian of history, a keeper of stories meant only for those who sought them with pure intentions. As they emerged from the cave, the first light of dawn touched the horizon, casting a warm glow over the landscape. The three friends stood at the entrance, looking back at the cavernous maw that had nearly swallowed them. "What will we tell people?" Yusuf asked. Samir smiled. "The truth, that there's something incredible down there. But some things are best left a mystery." With one last look, they turned away, each carrying a piece of the cave's legacy in their hearts. They had come seeking treasure and found something far greater, a reminder of respect, humility, and the power of the unknown. From that day on, Blackstone Cave remained a symbol of mystery and adventure for the town, but Samir, Jamal, and Yusuf held the deeper truth close. And every now and then, they'd gather by the cave, share stories of their adventure, and remind each other of the night they discovered the secret of Blackstone Cave, where the greatest treasure was the journey itself. Abdullah had always been known in the small town of Rahimabad as the type of man who solved problems. From fixing broken windows to helping neighbors with unexpected repairs, he was a trusted figure, always ready to lend a hand. But on a cold December night, he found himself embroiled in a mystery more complex than anything he had ever encountered. It all began when his old friend, Hassan, showed up at his doorstep, looking anxious and out of breath. Hassan was a tall, wiry man, known for his sense of humor and easygoing personality. But tonight, his face bore none of the lightheartedness Abdullah was accustomed to. "Abdullah, I need your help," he said, his voice low and urgent. Abdullah nodded, motioning for him to come inside. The house was warm and cozy, a stark contrast to the bitter cold outside. As Hassan settled into an armchair, Abdullah poured him a glass of water and waited patiently for him to gather his thoughts. After a few moments, Hassan spoke again. "I've been receiving strange messages," he said, pulling out an old, battered mobile phone from his pocket. He handed it to Abdullah, who examined it curiously. "What kind of messages?" Abdullah asked. Hassan leaned forward, his voice barely a whisper. "They're warnings. Someone's been sending me text messages, telling me that I'm in danger and that I need to go to the old mosque at midnight." Abdullah's eyebrows rose in surprise. The old mosque had been abandoned for years, left in disrepair after the town built a new one closer to the center. It was said to be haunted, and few people dared to go near it after sunset. Abdullah had heard plenty of stories, but he never put much stock in them. "Who would send you such messages?" Abdullah asked, glancing down at the phone. "That's the thing," Hassan replied, looking more troubled than ever. "I don't know. The messages come from an unknown number, and they're always brief, just a line or two, urging me to come to the mosque at midnight. But last night the message was different. It said, 'Tonight, bring someone you trust.'" Abdullah considered the situation carefully. He knew Hassan well enough to know he wouldn't fabricate something like this. If Hassan said he'd been receiving strange messages, Abdullah believed him. But the question remained, who would want him to go to the old mosque? And why? After a brief silence, Abdullah made up his mind. "All right, Hassan, I'll go with you. But if this turns out to be some prank, you owe me a big favor." Hassan managed a weak smile, visibly relieved. "Thank you, Abdullah. I didn't know who else to ask." The two men spent the next few hours preparing for their midnight excursion. Abdullah packed a flashlight and a sturdy walking stick, just in case they encountered any trouble. Hassan, meanwhile, brought along his old pocket knife, an item he rarely carried, but felt might come in handy. At 1:45, they set off towards the old mosque, the icy wind biting at their faces. The streets were empty, the houses dark and quiet, as the townspeople slept peacefully in their beds. The journey felt surreal, as if they were stepping into a world outside of time, a place where the ordinary rules no longer applied. When they reached the mosque, they stopped for a moment, gazing up at the crumbling building. Its once grand structure was now cloaked in shadows, its windows dark and lifeless. A chill ran down Abdullah's spine as he took in the eerie silence surrounding them. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, glancing over at Hassan. Hassan nodded, though he looked as nervous as Abdullah felt. "The message said midnight. We're here. We might as well see it through." They stepped inside the mosque, the creak of the old wooden doors echoing through the empty hall. The air was thick with dust, and the faint smell of mildew lingered in the corners. Abdullah turned on his flashlight, casting a beam of light across the broken tiles and faded walls. The place felt frozen in time, as if it had been abandoned only yesterday. They walked down the main aisle, their footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust. At the far end of the hall, they spotted a small, crumpled piece of paper lying on the floor. Abdullah picked it up, frowning as he examined it. The message was hastily scrawled, as if written in a hurry. "Look under the pulpit." Abdullah and Hassan exchanged uneasy glances. It was clear that someone wanted them to be here, but who, and why? With a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, they made their way to the pulpit, a small raised platform where the imam would once stand to deliver sermons. The wood was old and splintered, its surface worn from years of use. Abdullah crouched down and shone his flashlight underneath it. To his surprise, he found a small metal box tucked away in a hidden compartment. It was covered in dust, but otherwise intact. Carefully, he pulled it out and set it on the floor between them. "What do you think is inside?" Hassan whispered, his eyes wide with anticipation. Abdullah shrugged, his own heart pounding with excitement. Only one way to find out. He lifted the lid, revealing a stack of old letters, each one tied with a piece of string. They were yellowed with age, but the handwriting was still legible. Abdullah picked up the top letter and unfolded it, his eyes scanning the faded ink. As he read, his expression shifted from confusion to astonishment. The letters told the story of a man named Ahmed, a local scholar who had lived in Rahimabad many years ago. Ahmed had been a deeply spiritual man, known for his kindness and generosity, but he had a secret, a fearsome one. The letters revealed that Ahmed had discovered a hidden passage beneath the mosque, leading to an underground chamber. Inside, he had found ancient texts, manuscripts that spoke of long-lost knowledge and secrets beyond ordinary understanding. Fearing the knowledge would be misused, Ahmed had decided to keep the discovery a secret, hiding the manuscripts and leaving clues only for those he deemed worthy. Abdullah looked up at Hassan, his mind racing. These letters. They're a guide. Ahmed wanted someone to find the chamber, but only if they were willing to risk everything. Hassan's eyes widened. You're not suggesting we go down there, are you? Abdullah took a deep breath, his sense of adventure overpowering his caution. We came this far. If Ahmed thought this was important enough to hide, then maybe we should see it through. Reluctantly, Hassan agreed. They searched the mosque carefully, following the directions in the letters. After a few hours, they found a narrow stairwell concealed behind a loose tile. It led down into darkness, the walls damp and cold. With only their flashlight to guide them, they descended, the silence pressing down on them like a weight. The air grew colder as they moved deeper, the walls lined with strange markings that neither man could decipher. At last, they reached the underground chamber. The room was small, its walls lined with shelves filled with ancient texts and artifacts. Abdullah's eyes gleamed as he realized the significance of what they had found. These were records of ancient knowledge carefully preserved by Ahmed for future generations. But at the center of the room stood a large, intricately carved box, its surface covered in symbols. Abdullah approached it, his heart pounding with excitement. He lifted the lid, revealing a collection of scrolls and documents, each one detailing wisdom and guidance passed down through generations. Hassan let out a low whistle. This is incredible. Imagine what this knowledge could mean for the town, for our people. Abdullah nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. But as they examined the contents of the box, they noticed one final message, inscribed on a small plaque at the bottom. This knowledge is a trust. Use it wisely, for the benefit of others. And remember, it is not for personal gain. They stood in silence, absorbing the weight of the message. Ahmed had entrusted this knowledge to them, not for fame or fortune, but for the betterment of the community. As they left the chamber, they made a pact to honor Ahmed's wish. They would study the knowledge they had found, sharing only what would benefit others, preserving the secrets that were meant to stay hidden. The discovery of the hidden chamber would remain their secret, a bond that would tie them together for the rest of their lives. And though they returned to Rahimabad with no physical treasure, they carried something far more valuable, the legacy of wisdom, a gift from the past to the future, meant to inspire and uplift those who sought it with pure hearts.